Hello everyone, my name is Ashish and you are watching the Ultimate Dev Academy YouTube channel, and welcome to another project video where we'll build a portfolio website from scratch. And I also plan to show you the deployment of this website if you want. So let me know in the comment section if you want a deployment video of this project. And if I get enough comments, I'll record the deployment video for you guys. Now before we start this project, I want you to know that this design is taken from a video from Design Code. I have attached the video link in the description, so if you are interested in designing it from the scratch, you can visit the link and watch the video. Having said that, let's roll the intro and get started. So as you can see, we have our VS Code and our browser side by side, so we can see the code as well as the changes we make on the browser. In here, I have opened the portfolio project which I have already created so that we can take a reference. And before we start the build, I want you to do one thing. There's a link in the description for the assets folder. So just download those assets and I want you to copy it in the working directory. So you can see I have opened a folder, and in the folder I'll keep all my files, and I want you to keep the assets folder inside this folder. So I already have my assets folder downloaded, so I'll quickly copy and paste in this folder. So once you download and unzip and copy the assets folder inside your working directory, it will look something like this. So after that, I want you to create a file and name it index.html, and here we'll keep all our HTML code, and also we'll create another file named style.css, and here we'll keep all our CSS files. Now I'll minimize the sidebar, close this, and in the index.html we will say the exclamation mark and we will press tab, and emit will give us a nice boilerplate to start our work. I'll press Alt Z so that we can get word wrap and you can see everything on one screen, and we'll also increase its width a little so that you can have a better view. I hope everything is visible now. Now the way we are going to move ahead with this build is that we are going to create block by blocks. First we'll create this navbar, then we'll create this hero section, after that we'll create this about me, and so on. So let's first start with the navbar. So first we'll give this a title. Here I'll say Ashish portfolio, like this. And now inside the body we'll create a section, so we'll say section like this. Now inside the section what we can do is we will create a nav. So, and inside the nav we'll create how many? 1 2 3 4 5 links. So here we'll say A*5, and this will create 5 anchor tags for us. Here emit is coming into clutch, and we get emit by default in VS Code. That's why I like VS Code so much, because it gives us so many out of the box features. Now inside the href we are going to place some IDs. So we have not created those IDs, but we'll create them in future, and I'll write here beforehand. So here the first anchor tag will refer to home, then we can have the about. So here I'll say about, then in here we'll say probably like social, and then in here we'll say work, after that contact, like this. Okay, now we will create these links as well. So here we'll say home. Here we will say about. Now next in the social, I want to show the logo. So if I click here, you can see it takes us to the social media links. So like so, we will create a logo. For now, I'm just leaving it with the text A, and this logo is not an image. There's just text and some CSS, and you can see how pretty it's looking. So we'll create something like that for your name initials. So don't worry about that. So for now, I'm just writing A here, and after that, here we'll say work, and here we will say contact, like this. Place it in a separate line. Okay, that's great. Yeah. Now, after the nav, what we want to do, let's see how our web page looks. So for that, I have an extension installed, and it is named, I think, Live Server. So you can see that here we have Live Server. Yeah, this extension. So you can download this extension from Ritwik Day, and what it will enable you is that you can click this Go Live button here, or you can just right click the index.html and click Open with Live Server, and you can see that you have got all your links. Now what this extension does is that if you change something here on your editor, for example, if I add a p tag here, and if I say this is awesome, you can see it is automatically getting reflected here without me saving the document. So that is awesome. So that's why you should definitely install this Live Server extension. Now, after that, let's move further. Now, inside this section, we also want to add this hero block. You can see here, the navbar and the hero block are in the same section. So here, I'll create a div like this, and in here, I'll say you can write whatever you like. For example, you can say hi, your name, and then whatever text you want. I'll go with this. So I'll create a p tag like this, and I'll say I am a creative web developer from India, like this. And then we want to have these two buttons. So one button is this Hire Me button, and then we have this Download CV button. So we will create these two buttons. So we'll say the button into two and give us two buttons, thanks to Emmett. And here we'll say Hire Me. And in the next button, we will say Download CV. Like this. That's great. Let's put this in another line like this. Okay, awesome. Now after these buttons, what we want to do is we want to create this About Me section. So for the About Me section, we'll create another section. So we create a section, and inside the section, we'll create a H2, and here we'll say About Me, like this. Now after that, we want to create a p tag. So we'll create a p, and inside the p, we'll copy and paste all of this text here. You can pause the video and write whatever is written, or you can just write whatever you want. Okay, now after that, let's move on to the next section, and here we have my recent works. So let's create another section. Here again, we'll create a h2, and we'll say my recent works, and then you can see that we have these three cards. So for that, we'll create three divs. So we'll say div 3 like this, and in here we will write the title for now. So for in the first div, I'll say blogs. In the second div, we can say dev projects. And in the third div, we can say design projects. Like this. Now, we want to create this contact form. Okay, so for that, we create another section. And in this section, we'll again add a h2, and here we'll say get in touch, like this. And inside this section, actually you can see that we have two divs. So we have this particular part and we have this particular part. So for that, we'll add two divs here. I'll say div *2 like this. And then we will put this h2 in one of this div like this. And in the second div, again, we will add a h2. And in here, we'll write send me a message. Okay, now inside this get in touch div, you can see we have also some text and a contact number and email. Okay, so what we can do here is we can add a p tag here, and we will copy and paste all of this text from here to here like this, and then we'll have two more p tags. And in the first tag, we'll have phone number, and in the second p tag, we will have the email like this. That's great. Now in this div, we have a form. So what we can do is we can add a form. Okay, let's leave the action to blank for now. And in here, we have like 4 inputs. So we'll say input to 4. And now we got 4 inputs. The first one is text, of course. Second one, we want the type to be email. Okay. And the third one, we want the type to be text. Great. The fourth one is not actually a text input. It is actually a text area. Okay. So we will add a text area here. We'll remove this input, and instead we'll add text area like this. Don't worry, we'll configure all of this later. For now, we're just creating a basic template so that we know what we're working with. Okay. Now after this, we also have a submit button. So we'll create that button. So I'll say button, and I want that button to be submit button like this. Okay, great. And here we will say send message like this. And now our basic HTML template is ready. So let's see how does it look. So if I go here, okay, this is how it looks right now. We have like 4 inputs, and we have a button in the form. We have this send me a message, get in touch. Okay, look at the difference. This is just HTML, and this is HTML plus CSS. That's awesome. So we are going to do our CSS magic on this HTML, and we'll make this look awesome. Now let's start with the CSS. But before that, we need to link our HTML with the CSS file. So for that, what we're going to use the link tag. So before the title, I'll add a link tag like this, and the href will be style.css. Now since my index.html and style.css are in the same folder, so I don't need to specify the path. I just need to write the file name, and it will automatically identify which file I'm talking about. But for if in your case, if you're using the styles.css in some other folder, then you need to specify the path. Okay, so I hope that's clear. But if you're following along with me, no need to worry, just type style.css and you will be good to go. Now we need to test this style.css, so you can just control and click so that you are now into style.css. After that, we'll just say like star, and in here we'll say background color red, like this. And you can see now the background color is red, so that means that our style.css and index.html are connected. You should definitely do this check because it saves you a lot of time. You add a lot of CSS and then you realize nothing is working and you keep figuring it out. And the simple issue is that you probably haven't written this tag correctly. So just make sure that you make the test, and after that you'll be good to go. So now in here we are going to say margin 0, padding 0, and we'll say box sizing border box. Okay, we also want to say that we want the color to be white, so I'll write FFF, and we want the font family as Poppins. So for that we'll use the Google font Poppins. I'll just show you how to use Google Fonts in your project. For now I'll just write Poppins like this, and I'll provide a default fallback font that will be sans serif like this. So as you can see, the color of the text is white and that's why you cannot see it. But right now the Poppins font is not applied. It's just sans serif font. Okay, this is the default font which I provided. So we need to include Poppins font in our project. So for that, what we can do, we can just open a new tab, and in here we'll say Google Fonts like this, and inside Google Fonts here you can see Poppins. So in here you can see here we have Poppins, and from the Poppins we're gonna select few styles. So I think we'll select all of it. Okay, so we'll say this one, then this one, this one, this one, this one. You can select all of them so that we can use the various styles we have available with the font, or you can select only a few styles depending on your need. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to select all of these, and then when you see the selected families, you can see all the selected families here, and I click on import. You can also use the link tag. You can use the link tag in your HTML. However, I'm going to use the import version. So this is the import version. I'll just copy this import statement which is inside the style tags and copy it, and then over here at the top we will paste it like this. Okay, press Alt Z, and so that we can activate word wrap. And here you can see that we have imported the Poppins Google font. Now if you check our portfolio, you can see that the Poppins font is now applied. So now to show you, I can just change this color to black for now, and you can see that now we have the Poppins font. Okay, so that's how you use Google Fonts in your web pages. Now let's move ahead. Okay, now we need to create few classes. Okay, now what do we want to do? We want this navbar to be at the center like this. You can see at the center and at the top. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll create a div around this navbar and use the flexbox to center it. This is a very nice trick you can use to center anything you want around your web page, is that you create a div around it and then apply CSS flexbox properties to it. If you don't know, let me show it to you. So here we'll create a div. Sorry, it's div like this. Okay, and we will copy this nav inside this div. Okay, now we'll give this div a class of top menu. Now we'll take this top menu class here, dot top menu, and what we can do is we can say display flex like this, and then we will say justify content center and align items center like this. And you can see that now our nav bar is at the top. Now we'll also give it padding. So I'll say padding and I'll say 1 rem like this. Okay, so 1 rem is 16 pixel. So these are some of the CSS basics. If you don't know about it, you can check out the playlist which is attached here in the cards. Okay, so if you want to learn more about Flexbox and what is this rem unit and things like that, you can definitely check out that playlist. It will really help you. Okay, now moving ahead. So we want some spacing between these links. For that, we're going to target our anchor tag inside the nav. So we'll say nav a like this, and in here we will say padding. I want the top and the bottom padding to be 1 rem and the left and right padding to be 2 rem like this, and we also want to remove these underlines from the link tag. So we will say text decoration to none. So we can see our nav bar is coming in place. Now next, what we want to do is we want to give the background color to the complete body. So for that, let's target the body element, and in here we will say background color to hash 0f103f like this. Okay, and we'll switch our text color to white. So here I'm going to say FFF like this, and now you can see that we have this nice background color. In the body element, we also want to have the position as absolute so that the rest of the positioning is relative to our body element, and we'll give it a top 0 like this. Now let's work on our logo. Okay, so for that, inside our index.html, we'll add a class of logo here, and we'll also add a class of gradient like this. So we'll create this gradient class and this kind of a utility class. So we'll create this once, and wherever we want that gradient, we will use this particular class. Okay, so let's go to style.css, and in here, now let's create the logo class. So here we'll say logo, and in here we will say font family to Sophia like this, and we need to import this Sophia font from Google Fonts. We'll go to Google Fonts, and here we will say Sophia. So let's go to Google Fonts, and you can see I have searched for Sophia. Click on Sophia, and we close this, and we just want the regular version. So I'll say select regular, then go back here, and now again we will go to the import statement, and we'll copy this import statement and we'll replace this here. And you can see now we have both the fonts. We have Poppins as well as here we can see Sophia. So now if we come back to our site, you can see that the font is now changed. Now let's increase the font size a bit. So we'll say font size 1.5 rem like this. We'll increase the font weight as well. So we'll say font weight to bolder. Next we can say we want a border, so we'll say border 1px solid, and we want the color to be 295/4A3. Okay, so now we have a nice border. Now you can see that this is square. We want a circle here. So for that we'll say border radius to 50%, and this will create a circle for us. That's great. Now let's add a padding of 3 pixels like this, and you can see that now it is no more circular. Don't worry, we'll fix that soon. First let's give it a height of 3 rem, and I want width of 3 rem as well, 3 rem like this. You can see the height and width properties are not getting implemented. Now don't worry, this I have done it intentionally because I want to show you something. Okay, so now we'll say text align to center like this, and we want a box shadow. Okay, so we'll say box shadow to 0 0, that is position at 0 0. Then we want the blur to be 5 pixels, and we want the color to be RGB 201, 97 and 222 like this. And you can see that we have now got a nice box shadow, but you can see that the height and the width property are not getting implemented on this text. So for that, what we can do is we can just right click this element. Okay, so just right click this element and click on inspect, and you can see here in the style section, okay, I'll just increase it a bit, and you can see here the height and width property are not getting implemented. So if we check this, you can see that the display inline property prevents the height from having effect. Now since we have added the anchor tags inside the nav, the anchor tags are by default inline. We need to change this. So how we can change this? We can change the style of the nav. So for nav, we will say display flex like this. And if you do this, you can see that now our styles are getting implemented. Just for safety, I'll also add align items to center and justify content to center. Now if you want to learn about these properties, as I told you, you can watch my CSS playlist for that. Okay, so after doing this align item center and justify content center, you can see that we have got this nice looking logo here. Now we want to add the gradient as well, and for that we have this gradient class. So let's style this gradient class. So for that we'll say gradient like this, and in here we'll say background image like this, and in here we'll say linear gradient like this, and we'll first specify the direction. So we'll say to right. Okay, after that we'll specify the colors. So at the starting, I want RGBA 97,4,95, and the opacity will be 0.5. So RGBA is A stands for alpha, and the alpha is 0.5, and this I want at 0%. So basically at the start. Now we'll add the next color of the gradient. So we'll say RGBA again 170, 7, 108, and we want the opacity to be full. So I'll say 1, and this I want at 50%. So I'll say 50% like this. And the next color I want is RGBA, again 170, 7, 107, and 0.5. And this I want at 100%. Okay, so you can see that we have got this nice looking gradient which looks like a logo. My name starts from A, that's why I've added A here. For you, you can just change the text at this position and you will get your own logo like this. So for me, I'll keep it at A like this. Now next, what we need to do is we need to create this beautiful container around the nav bar. So for that, we will go back to our top menu class, and in here we will say border radius to 0. So at the top left corner we want the border radius to be 0, then 0 at the top right corner, then at the bottom right corner we want it to be 50%, and next in the bottom left corner we want 50% again, and that's it. Now you're not able to see it, but it is there. And if you want to see it, what we can do is we can just add a border, for example 1px solid and white like this, and you can see that we have this border here, but we want the container to be like this, right? So to fix that, we can use the position property. We'll say position fixed like this, and we can say top 0 like this. And now you can see we have a nav bar of the size we want. Now we want to make a little changes as well, like we want the background color. Right now it's not having a background color, and you can see the content is visible through our nav bar, which we don't want. So we'll say background color to be 0f103f like this, and you can see that we are getting there. Next, what we can do is we can add a z-index of 100 so that it always remains on the top. Now, instead of doing the border radius to 50% and 50%, we'll change this to 50 pixels. Okay, and now you can see that we have got this nice container around our nav bar. However, a nav bar is not at the center, and we also need to fix one more issue, that is our elements have gone behind the nav bar and they are not visible. So we'll fix that while we create the hero section. So now let's move on to the hero section. We'll remove this border white which we had just added for our reference, and you can see that our nav bar is ready. Now for the hero section, let's first see what we need to do. So we'll go back to our completed project. You can see that we have this nav bar, then we have this big bold text here, and we have two nice buttons, and everything is in this complete viewport. So even if I like change the size of our screen, still everything remains like this in the same screen. So for that, we will create a container which will hold the navbar as well as this text and these two buttons. So let's go to our index.html and let's go back to our live preview. And in here, what we want to do is we want to create a div like this, and this div should hold our div of navbar as well as the div containing the text and the buttons. Okay, so I'll click here, press Alt and down arrow to move this closing div tag here like this. And we also want to give this div a class called main screen container. Now I'm not very good with naming the classes, so if you find some other name, you can name that as well. For me, this works fine. Now we also want to change the speed tag to H1, okay, because I want to create this as the heading. Now next, let's go to our CSS file. So here we will target our main screen container. We'll say main screen container like this. And now again, we want to center this complete thing. So what we will do, we will say display flex, then align item center, and justify content center. And you can see that now our navbar is at the center. However, we cannot see the hero text as well as the buttons. So don't worry about that. We'll fix that in a second. Now next, what we need to do is we need to give it a height. So for the height, I will give it a height of 100 VH. Okay, and now you can see that we have the navbar as well as the H1 text and these two buttons. So that is great, and everything is covering the complete viewport. So even if I change the height of my screen, you can see that it will remain inside the viewport. Okay, now let's come back to our HTML, and here to this div which contains the hero text and the buttons, let's give it a class of hero. So I'll say hero like this. Now go back to the CSS and let's target the hero class. In here, we want to say flex 1. This basically means that the hero div will get the maximum space. But now you can see in the flex box, we have two items, the navbar and this hero div. So we want the hero div to take the maximum of the space. Okay, so that's why we are using flex 1. And after that, again, here we want to create this as a flex box. So again, we will say display flex like this, and you can see now these are in the same row. For that, we will change the flex direction. So we'll say flex direction to column. By default, the flex direction of a flex box is row. So we'll change that to column. And now you can see we have the H1 and the two buttons in one single column. Now next, we want to give a max width property. So I want the maximum width to be 35 rem. And now I have everything in the center of the page, and that's looking good. Now let's come to our H1 tag. So for that, we'll take the hero class, and inside we want the H1, and we will give it a font size of 60 pixels. like this, and you can see that we are getting there. Next, we will give it a margin bottom. We will say MB, and it will give it free RAM. Okay, so we have some spacing with the buttons. Now, to adjust the buttons, we will create a button div. Right now, we have 3 elements in the hero div. So there's one H1, there's one this button, and the other button. But I want only 2 elements. One, this H1 div, the other one is the buttons, so that I can have the buttons side by side. So I'll create another div to enclose these buttons. Now let's go here and let's create dot buttons div and press tab, and we'll create a div with a class of button div. Let's name it buttons div. It contains 2 buttons. Okay. Now cut these and paste it here. That's great. Now you can see that we have both our buttons below our H1 in a single line. Now let's go back to our style.css. Let's take our buttons div. So we'll say buttons div. And what I want to give it is align self property. So this basically tells where your buttons are going to be inside the flex box, and I want it to be flex end. So flex end like this, and you can see now my buttons are to the end of the flex box. Now we'll also give it a width property of max content so that the content doesn't break inside the button. Okay, that's good. Now let's create the style and the gradient for the buttons. For that, we will add first the gradient class to the button. So let's go to the button, and I want the gradient to be applied in this button, in download CV button. So I'll say class gradient like this, and you can see this nice gradient inside the button. Now don't worry, we will improve it further. So let's go back to our style.css, and here let's create the buttons. So to have consistency on my site, I want all the buttons to look somewhat similar. So I'll take button, and the styles will apply to all the buttons of my site. Here we will say first border none. So I don't want this border around the buttons. That's great. Now I want to give it a background of RGBA black 0, 0, 0, and I want to give it a transparency of 0.3. That's great. After that, I want to say background image. Now this background color is a fallback. So if in some browsers if the background image property doesn't work, because the background image property will not work for older browsers. So if the background image property doesn't work, it will fall back to this color. Now in the background image, it will provide the gradient, and you know how to create a gradient. So for that, you're going to say linear gradient like this. Now you want to specify the direction. So I'll say to right. After that, you want to specify colors. So I'll say RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.1, and this I wanted a star, so basically 0%. After that, the next color I want is RGBA, and I'll say 130, 128, 130, and I want the opacity to be 0.5, and this I want at 51%. And after that, we want the next color to be 48, 48, 48. And the opacity will be 0.1. This I want towards the end, so 100% like this. And you can see we have created this nice gradient in that button. Now this gradient does not apply to this button because we have added the gradient class to this button, and the classes have a higher specificity. Now let's add some padding. So let's say padding 1 rem like this. Okay, it should be padding like this. After that, let's give it a width of 12 rem. Okay, now the gradient seems too intense, so for that we will add a background size property. So we'll say background size, and let's increase it to 200%. Now you can see the gradient is a bit softer and it looks really cool. After that, let's add some box shadow. So we'll say box shadow. So we'll say 0, 10 px, then 20 px. So basically these are the positions. So x0, y10 px, you can see the border. Now I'll specify the blur. So it's 20 px, and after that we will specify the color. So we'll say RGBA. I want a shade of black again. So 0, 0, 0 and 0.15. Now let's work on the text in the buttons. So for that we will do letter spacing. Let's change the letter spacing to 1 px. Okay, and we will also say text transform to uppercase. We say uppercase like this, and you can see that we are getting there. We also want to separate these buttons a little, so we'll give it a margin right of 1 rem. And that's awesome. Now we also want to give it a border radius so that we can get this oval shape, but we will not do it here because you can see here we have 2 buttons and we also have a button here, and this is having a different border radius. So we will target the buttons only inside the buttons div. For that we will say dot buttons div, and here we'll say button. So basically the buttons which are the children of buttons div, and here we will specify the border radius as 2 rem like this. And now you can see that we have created this awesome looking buttons. Now next what we want to do is we want to create some hover properties. Right now when we are hovering over the button, it's not, there's nothing that's happening. So let's create some animation for our hover. So we'll say button hover like this, and in here we will say box shadow. So you want to change the box shadow to 0, 10 px, 20 px, RGBA, and we'll make the shadow a little bit darker so it will give an effect of lift. So basically you'll feel that the buttons are lifting up. So we'll say 0, 0, 0 and 0.35 like this. Next we'll give it a border. So we'll say border 1 px, solid, very subtle border. So again we'll say RGBA, and we'll give it a shade of white. So 255, 255, and the opacity will be 0.35 like this. Now after that we want to shift the position of the gradient. So you can see that's coming very well, but we want to create this kind of effect. You can see here like this, the way it shifts the gradient inside the button. So to create that we can do background position, and we can change the position to right center like this. Now if you hover over the buttons, you can see there's a shift in the button. Okay, the shift in the gradient. Don't worry, the shift is not very smooth, we will fix that soon. But you can see that we have this nice border and there's a shift in the gradient as well as a slight increase in the opacity of the shadow. And it is looking really good. Not really good right now, but we're going to fix that. Don't worry about that. So here, to fix the smoothness of the hover, we will say transition and we'll set it to 0.3 seconds. So basically the transition should happen with a span of 0.3 seconds. Now we'll copy this, paste it here as well in the buttons like this. Now if we hover over these buttons, you can see the nice shift in the gradient. Okay, yeah, like this. So it's looking really awesome now. After that, we also want to change the cursor. I want the cursor to be pointed because these buttons will be links. So let's change the cursor to pointer. And now if I hover over these buttons, you can see we're getting a nice shift in the gradient as well as a nice elevating effect in the button. And that's really cool. Now, but you can see that whenever I hover over these buttons, you can see there's slight shift in the text as well, which I don't want. So we're going to fix that. Don't worry. And we also want to place these images inside the box. Now let's start adding the images. So for that, if you have downloaded and unzipped the assets folder, you will see all the images inside the assets folder. So now let's go to our index.html, and in here first we want to place this particular image and then this image. So we'll place our first image right here on top. So just after the section we will say img tab, and here we will say assets / illustration top 1. So I want this particular image. Okay, and you can see now the image is here. We can keep the alt tag empty, or we can just say background image 1. Now we'll create some classes for this image. So we'll say class. We'll create one class which will be common for all these images, and then we'll create another class which will be specific to this particular image. So here I'll say ill, that will be the first class which will be common to all the images, and then here we'll say ill top 1. Okay, now let's go to our CSS file and let's code these classes. So first is the ill class. So I'll say .ill, and here we want to give it a position of absolute like this. It should be absolute, and we also want to give it a z index of -100 so that it always remain behind all the other elements. Now we'll create the specific styles for this particular image. So we'll say L top 1, and here we'll say left 0 and right 0, and we'll give it a height of 50 VH. Now let's add the other image. So we'll go back to our index.html file, and we want the other image here at the bottom. So we will go to the index.html, and here at the end, just before the section ends, we will add the other image. So here I will add the img tag just below the stuff, and here we'll use the file assets / illustration top 2. Okay, like this. You can keep the alt empty because this image is purely for representational purposes. So I leave it like that, and we should see the image, and you can see that the image is here. Now, let's give it some classes. So it will have the common class of illustration, that is ill, and I'll also give it a class ill top 2 like this. Okay, now let's code this ill top 2 class. So here I'll say ill top 2 and we'll say right 0 and bottom 0. Okay, now nothing happened. The image is still here and not at this location. This is because we want to make this section, we want to make the position of this section absolute as well. So for that, let's add a class to the section. So here I'll say class equal to full screen. Okay, now let's go to style.css. We'll go here and we'll say full screen like this. And here we'll say height 100 bh. I want the width to be 100 bw. And we want the position as absolute like this. Now if we refresh this, you can see that now the image is relative to the screen. Okay, so right now you might seem that everything is broken, but it is not. The reason why everything is everything seems like this, or everything is on top of each other, because as soon as we put the position property in our section, it is removed from the normal flow of elements. Okay, so it is just positioned differently, and that's why the rest of the elements are positioned on the top of this particular section. Okay, so just don't worry about that. We will fix that soon. For now, we can just comment everything out in the HTML like this, so that we have a clear view of what we are doing, and you can see everything seems perfectly in place. Now, one small issue is that when we hover over this button, there's slight shift in the text which we have not been able to fix. The reason for that is because the height of the button is increasing when we hover over that. This border is probably taking up the space, and that's why the text are shifting by 1 pixel. So for that, let's go to our button element, and here you can see that we have not added any border, and when we hover over it, we have added a border. Let's add a border here as well. Sorry, where is the button? Yeah, so just copy this border property and we will paste it here inside the buttons. Okay, like this. Now if we hover over the buttons, okay, we need to refresh it probably. Did we copy and paste it correctly? No, we have forgot semicolon. Okay, like this. Now there's a button, and now when we hover over these buttons, you can see the text does not shift because the size of the button remains constant, but we are missing that border, so we will remove its opacity, will reduce its opacity to 0.1 like this. Now when we hover over it, you can see the nice shiny border and the nice shift in the gradient, and that completes our hero section. Now one last thing which is left in this hero section is this glass kind of effect. So as you can see here, we can see what is behind these buttons in a very diffused manner. It is giving a glass kind of effect, as you can see through the glass, and that is known as glass morphism effect. So let's create this glass morphism effect, and it's very easy to create that kind of effect. You can see here we're not getting that kind of effect. We can just see through what is behind the button, but we're not getting the glass effect. So to create that glass morphism effect, we just need to add one line of code, and that is, here we will go to our button, and here we'll say backdrop filter. So we'll say backdrop filter, and we'll set the filter to blur, and we'll set the blur to 5 pixels like this. And now you can see we can still see through the buttons, but just behind the button the image is blurred, and that is giving a very nice glass morphism effect. So that's it for the hero section. Now let's move on to creating the about section. So for that, let's go to our index.html, and here we will uncomment all of this. So I'll press Ctrl and / and this is uncommented. After that, I will comment everything except the about section like this. And now you can see we have this about me section here. So now in this section we have a h2 element and a p element. Let's put both of these elements inside a div. So we'll create a div with a class of about me content like this. Press tab, and this will create a div. Now we close our h2 and p elements inside this div like this, and here we will say position relative. Now we want a width of 650 pixels and a height of 650 pixels as well. Now why we are adding equal height and width? Because we want a circle like this. Okay, so we are going to create the circle using CSS. This circle is not an image, it's pure code. So we'll create that using just CSS. So here you can see that we have a height and width. After that, we will say border radius. So whenever you want to convert a div into circle, you can use border radius 50%. And now there's a circle around this about me content. If you want to see that, I can show you. So I'll say border 1px solid white. Okay, like this, and you can see that we have created a circle. Now we want to fill this circle with this gradient. So you know how to create gradients inside a div. We will use background image, and here we'll say linear gradient like this, and then we can specify the direction. Earlier we used to right to left. Now this time we will use degrees. So we can say 144 degree like this. And then we need to specify the colors. So the first color is C961DE, and that I want from 13.5%. After that, we want the next color 295483, and this will be at 90% like this. And you can see that we have got this beautiful circle here. Now we want to place our content inside the circle. So we'll get onto that in a moment. Firstly, we want to remove this border, which I just added to show you. Okay, now as I told you, we have these two elements inside the about me. So we have the h2 element and we have the p element. So we can use display flex to handle it more gracefully. So let's say display flex, like this, and then we will say flex direction to column, then we'll say justify content center, justify content to center. Now we want to align the items to the left, so we'll say align items to the left like this. Now you didn't see any change here, but this will be crucial when we'll add our image. So here you can see that we have an image as well. So when we'll add this, this will make more sense. Okay. So after that, we will say padding left. So we'll say padding left, and we'll say 300 pixels. And then we want to give it a padding right, and we will give it a dynamic padding right of 5 viewport width. Okay, so that the padding changes whenever we change the size of the browser. You can see that we have more padding when the browser width is more, and when we are shortening it, we have got less padding. Don't worry, we'll make it completely responsive using media queries, but even at this level, we will add some sort of responsiveness to our code. Okay, so after that, we will add a nice box shadow. So we'll say box shadow, and here we'll say 0, 0, 100 px, 0, and then we will give it a color RGBA 41, 84, 163, and let's give it opacity of 0.5 like this. And you can see we have got a nice soft box shadow around our div. This is looking really, really cool. Okay, now let's add these two images which you can see here. So we have one image which is going inside the box, and there's another image which is outside the box, and also we have to create these beautiful circles around our about me. So let's learn how to create that. So for that, we will add the image of this person inside the about me content div, and rest of the two images like the circle and this beautiful crystal outside the div. So let's do that. After the P element, what we'll do, we will say img, and in the src we'll say assets slash, here we want to say this man from pngimg.com. Okay, like this. And now we want to add the other two images. Now, as I told you, the point here to note is that your person should be inside the div, and rest of the two images should be outside the div, inside the section of about me. So here we will add, we'll say img, and then here we will add the circle. So we will say asset slash pg small circle like this. Okay, and then we will add another img tag, and this will have assets slash illustration med like this. Now if you check our site, you can see that we have this circle here and we have this particular image here. Now we want to position this image right here, and we have to create the circle like this, like I showed you in the demo. Okay, so for that, let's add some classes. So for the person, we will add a class here, and we will say First, we'll give it the general class of L, and then let's give it a class of L pic. Okay, so it's a pic. You can take your own pic and add it here. For now, I'm using just this demo image from pngimg.com, and okay, that's great. Now let's add the classes to this small circle as well. So here we'll say class equal to ILL. After that, we will say L circle about. Okay, so we will use the circle many times, so that's why I have created this L circle about, because this circle is in the about section. After that, we will create a class here. Here we'll say L and L mid like this. Now let's go on to our CSS, and let's start with the person first. So here we'll say dot L dash pic. First, we want to scale this image to fit inside a circle. So for that, we'll say transform, and we'll say scale like this, and here we'll say 0.35. Okay, now we will say top to minus 350 pixels and left to minus 320 pixels. And then we want to give it a z index of 1000. So we'll say z index 1000 so that it remains on the top. Now you can see that the person is coming out of our circle. To place the image inside our circle, we will use the overflow property. So inside the about me content, we'll say overflow hidden like this, and this will clip the person inside our circle, and this is looking awesome. Now let's position our crystal and the circle. So for that, let's take the circle first. So what is the class of circle? So it is L circle about. Let's go to style.css, and here we'll say L circle about, and here I will say top 350 pixels, and we'll say left to 50%, and again we want it in the center of the viewport, so we'll say transform and transform, then we'll say translate, and let's translate it to minus 50% on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. And also we want to scale it a bit, so we'll say scale 1.2 like this. Okay, and now we can see that we have got the effect. However, we can see that there's a lot of overflow, while in our actual website there's no overflow. Okay, so we'll fix that soon. First, let's position this crystal as well. So we'll go to our index.html, take this L mid class. So here we'll say dot ill mid, and here we'll say top to 70% and right to minus 10%. And we want the z index to 1000. Okay, so that is on the top. That's great. Now this circle is really dark. I don't want it to be that dark. So for that, we will say opacity 0.1 like this. Now we also want to remove these scroll bars. So for that, we'll go to our body, and in here we will say overflow X, and we'll set it to hidden like this. And you can see there's no scroll bar on the x-axis, and we have beautiful about me section here. Now let's move on to the next section, that is my recent work section. Okay, now let's go back to our HTML, and in here we will uncomment everything, and we will leave the recent work section and then comment out the get in touch part. Okay, like this. Now you can see right now my recent works is here. So we'll fix that in a second. First, let's add a class to our section. So we'll say class equal to work like this. And in here, we will create a wrapper div with a class of work content. We'll wrap everything inside this div. Okay, now these, the blogs, the dev projects, and the design projects, they are cards, right? As you can see here, we have 3 cards. So we will create a card container for that. So after h2, I'll create another wrapper div with a class of card container like this. And inside this, we want to place all our 3 divs. Now here, since we have 3 cards, so let's start creating our cards. Now in the card, you can see that we have an image section and then we have a text here. Okay, so we'll create 2 different divs for that. So let's first create the first card. So I'll say card before like this. And also we want to give it a universal card class to all the cards so that we can keep the universal styling in that, and then we will add specific styling in the card before and card after. Okay, so like this, we have 2 classes, so card before and card. Okay, now inside the card before div, we will place this. So inside this card, we need 2 divs, one for the image and the other one for the text. Okay, so let's add another div with a class of card image like this, which will hold our image for the card. And let's say asset slash blog.png. So here we'll say blog.png like this. Then we will create another div. You can use this div. So we'll say, we'll add a class here. Sorry, class equal to, and in here we will say card text like this. And inside this card text, we will say, we'll create a p element. So p like this. And inside the p element, we will write blogs like this. So we have our first card ready. Now let's style this, and after that, we'll just copy and paste this 3 times to duplicate our cards, and we'll customize some of the styling, look at exactly like this. Okay, so for that, let's go to our style.css and we'll start with our work class. So let's go to style.css, and here we'll say dot work. And you know what we have to do? We will first give it a margin top of 60 rem. After that, we want to refresh the page once, and you can see that now our work section is here. So now let's add position absolute like this. Let's give it a top of 150, viewport height, and we'll give it a left of 50 viewport width. Place it in the center, and we need to do one more thing, that is translate minus 50%, comma 0, like this. And this will place our section at the right position. You can see here, we have our section here. Okay. After that, now let's come on to the work content. So here is our work content, this div, the wrapper div around all the cards. So we'll take dot work content like this, and here we will first give it a width of 80 viewport width. Okay, after that we will say text align center, and we want to give it a font size of 1.5 rem, like this. That's great. Now you can see that after the About Me section, we have my recent works. We can now start styling our cards. So first, we'll take the universal card class, which will be common to all three cards. And here we will give a border radius of 30 pixels. Okay. And we want to give it a border as well. So we'll say border 1px solid and gray, like this. And you can see we have our card component here. Now we also want to give it a margin. Now you can see that we have these cards overlapping each other. For that, we can use negative margins. Okay, so for that we will say margin for top and bottom I want 0, and for left and right I want -2 rem. This will create the overlapping effect of the card. Okay, after that let's go on to the card container. So we'll go to card container dot card container, and here since we have 3 cards and we want to display in a flex box, so we'll say display flex. Okay, after that we'll say justify content like this, and we'll keep it to center. We also want line items to be center for both X and Y axis. After that, we want to give it a margin top of 2 rem, like this. And now you can see the card is taking all the. Now you can see that the card is taking all the space and is placed in the center. Now to actually visualize this, we will copy and paste all our cards 3 times. So let's go to our index.html, and here we will take this div, the div with a class of card and card before, and we will copy this. So this div closes here. We'll copy this thing and paste it 2 times. Control V, Control V. That's great. And now you should see 3 cards here. You cannot see that, don't worry, we'll fix that in a second. We will delete these 2 divs. Okay. And now here we'll change this card before to card center, and here we will say card after, like this. We also want to change the text, so instead of blogs, here we will say dev projects, and here we'll say design projects. like this. Now, right now we can't. We can only see the card with dev projects. Don't worry, we'll fix that soon. We'll fix that in a second. So let's change the images as well. So instead of blog.png, this should be dev.png, yeah, development.png, and here we want design projects.png. So design project.png, like this. And now you can see we have our three cards. It's not visible right now because we have set the overflow X property to hidden, but we'll fix that soon, as I told you. So, but you can see that one card is here, the other card is here. Just the design is a bit off, so don't worry about it. After that, let's go to the CSS and let's start styling each of the individual cards. Okay, so we will take the card before class first. So we'll say dot card before, and we'll give it a height of 280 pixels and a width of 380 pixels, like this. And we'll give it a background color of RGBA 255, 255, 255, and set the opacity to 0.4, like this. Now let's take the card center. So we'll say dot card center, and here we'll set the height to a bit more than 280 pixels. So that is the 30 pixels. Let's set the width to 440 pixels, and we want the center card to be at the top. Okay, so we'll give it a Z index of 100, and we will set the background color. So set the background color to RGBA 181, 249, 253, and we will set the opacity to 0.4, like this. Okay, now if you can see this, our cards are coming in place. This is the left card. You're not able to make it because the images are a bit off. So let's fix that first. So we'll say dot card image, and here we'll say overflow hidden. Okay, and now next what we want to do is the styling for the card after. Now the card before and the card after should have the same height and width, as you can see here. So the card which is before and the after card, they have the same height and width. So we can just place a comma here and say dot card after, like this. And now you can see that we have these three cards in place. Okay, so we have the center card, we have this left card, and we have this right card. Now let me show you this card. So the card here contains two elements. As you can see, this is the card element, and this card contains two divs, the card image and the card text. So we need to give it, we need to turn this card into a flex box so that we can easily handle these two divs. So for that, we go inside the card and we'll set the display to flex, like this. And now you can see the images and the text are side by side. We want them to be placed in a column. So for that, we will say flex direction to column, like this. Okay, and now you can see that our cards are coming in shape. We have a text below here, but the images are still off. So let's fix that. For that, we want the images to take the complete space of the card. Okay, So for that, we can say flex 1, so that images take all of the space inside the card. Now let's fix the sizes of these images. So we'll say dot card image, and the images inside the card, we'll take that and we'll say width 100%, and we'll say height 100% like this, and we want the object fit as fill, okay, so that it takes up all the space in the card. Now the cards are looking quite good. Now let's style these text. So for that, we will say dot card text, and we want to give it a font size of 1.5 rem. Then let's give a font weight of 300. Let's give it a background color. So we'll say background color RGBA 0, 0, 0, and the opacity to 0.3. Now you can see that the text div is coming outside our card. So for that, we want to give it a border radius which is equal to the border radius of our card. So you can see the border radius of the card is here. Yeah, it's 30 pixels. So we'll just copy this, paste it here. So we don't want the border radius to be 30 pixels everywhere. We just want the border radius to be 30 pixels at the bottom, not at the top. For that, we can use 0 for the left corner, 0 for the right corner, and 30 pixels for the right bottom corner, and 30 pixels for the left bottom corner. And you can see now the text div is perfectly inside the card. After that, we also want to add a padding. So we'll say padding 10 pixels, and from sides I want 0 like this. Now one more thing which we need to do is to create that glass morphism effect which we have created here, as you can see. So for that, you know how to do that. We will use backdrop filter. So inside the card, we will say backdrop filter to blur 8 pixels like this. And now you can see that our card is ready. If you expand this, you can see that we have got really beautiful. Now let's create some hover effects for the card. So for that, I'll say dot card hover, and we'll give it a box shadow. So let's give it a box shadow at position 0, 0, and give it a blur of 30 pixels. And let's give it a color of 41, 84, 163, and 0.5 like this. And if we hover over this, you can see a nice box shadow around our card. Now we can also create a transition. So let's give it a transition of 0.3 seconds so that the effect is smooth like this. Now we'll also set the cursor to pointer like this. Now you can add links to these cards to your respective projects. Okay, you can have your names of project as well here as per your needs. Now the next thing which we need to do is we need to create these beautiful circles around our cards. For that, let's go back to our HTML, and here after the card container div, let's add these images. So here we'll say img, and in the src will say assets slash bg small circle png. Okay, like this. Now let's add another circle. Now we'll copy this and paste it again. So if I say Ctrl C, Ctrl V, like this. We're doing this because, as you can see here, we have two circles. We want to create this circle as well as this particular circle as well as this larger circle. And we also want to have this nice light shadow around it, as you can see here. So here the color is blue and there's a nice light shadow behind our cards. Okay, and here you can see that our cards are plain. We just have these two circles and there's no light shadow behind these cards. So for that, we'll create an empty div with a class of light shadow. So we'll say light shadow, like this. Now let's start styling all of this. First, we need to add some classes. So there will be a universal class of ILL. Then I will say ILL circle work Y. Okay, and let's copy this and paste it here. And here I'll say work 2, like this. Now let's start styling these things. First, let's take the light shadow. So I'll say light shadow. We want to give it a height of 200 pixels. Let's give it a width of 600 pixels. Let's give it a position of absolute. The top will be 50%. The left will be 50%. And to place it in the center, we want to say transform, translate, and this time we'll shift -50% on both X and Y axis. Now our div should be placed. To visualize that, we can add a border. So it's a border 1px solid and white, like this. And you can see that we have this nice div here. So we're working with this particular div. Okay, now what we want to do, we want to add a box shadow. So box shadow 0, 0, and we want a blur of 500 pixels. Okay, and we will give it a color RGBA 28, 104, 244, 0.8, like this. And you can see that we have created this nice light shadow effect, and we can just remove this border like this. Now you can see that since we have just added the box shadow, the div is visible here. So to remove that, we can add a background which will be same as the box shadow. So we will say RGBA, and it will be same as the box shadow, and we'll change the opacity to 0.2, like this. And now you can see that div is gone, and you can just see this beautiful shadow effect. Okay, now we also want this div to be behind everything, so we'll give it a z index of -1000 so that it always remain behind these cards. And we can also add a little blur to it. So we'll say filter blur 100 pixels, like this. And now you can see that the div is completely gone. If you don't add this filter, you can see there's a line here where you can oversee the div. So to remove that, if we add this blur, you can see that is gone and you can just see beautiful light shadow behind our recent works card. Okay, now let's start placing these circles. So for that, let's take .il circle work 1. So here we'll give top 0, left 50%, again transform, translate, we only want to translate on x-axis, 0 on y-axis, and we also want to give it a scale on x-axis as 0.8, and on y-axis we don't want any scaling like this, and we will reduce its opacity to 0.1 like this. And now you can see we have got this beautiful circle effect around our cards. Now let's place this circle as well. So for that, we'll say .ill circle work 2, and here we'll again give it a top of 0, left 50%. We'll say transform, translate -50%, 0, and we also want a scale property on x-axis 2.2, so we really want to scale on the x-axis and a little bit scaling on the y-axis as well, so 1.5, and that's awesome. After that, let's reduce its opacity to a really low value, so I'll say opacity 0.05 like this, and you can see these nice lines here. Now let's add a little bit of blur to it, so we'll say blur 1 pixels, and this will add a beautiful Gaussian blur to our image, and you can see how beautiful it is looking. Okay, that is super awesome. So our recent work section is ready, and now let's create the contact form. So to create our contact form, let's go back to our HTML, and here we'll uncomment this section like this, and now you can see our form is here. So let's add some classes to our form so that we can style it. So first, let's take this section and we'll add a class contact like this. Now everything seems to be broken, don't worry, we'll fix that. Okay, after that we will add a class of contact content to the div. Now inside the contact form, as you can see, we have two parts. So we have this particular part where we have some text and these phone numbers, and here we have the actual contact form. So for that we need to create two wrapper divs. Okay, so let's create these two divs. The first one will have a class of form info div like this, and this will hold the h2 element, the text, the phone numbers, and the email. Okay, so this will go in here like this, and the next div will be this contact form. Okay, so for that, let's create a div with a class of form content. Form content like this, and here we want to have this h2 send a message and this complete form along with the button. So we'll place it here. like this. Now refresh this, and here everything seems to be broken. However, this should not be the case. So for that, we can just close the server and then restart it again. And you can see, yeah, everything is fine now. So now let's start styling our form. So we'll start with the contact class. So we'll go to the style.css and we'll say dot contact. And in here, firstly, we want to add a position absolute. So we'll say position absolute like this. After that, we will give it a top of 240 VH and we'll give it a left of 50 VW. Place it in the center. We'll say transform, translate to -50% and 0 like this. And we want to give it a height of 100 viewport height so that it covers all the space in the viewport. Now if you check, you can see that our form is here. We also want a margin at the top, so we'll say margin 60 rem like this. And now the form content should be placed somewhere here. However, we can't see that right now, so don't worry, we'll fix that soon. And to actually see that, we can do border 1px solid like this, and still it is not visible. Okay, the reason why we can't find our form is that we have added a margin of 60 rem, and that's why the form has shifted outside of our viewport, and we have set the overflow X to hidden, and that's why we can't see the form. So we just need to change it to margin top like this, and you can see now a form is visible and it is perfectly in place. Now we want this get in touch div and the send message div to be side by side, and you know how do we do that, right? We use flexbox. So for that, let's see which is our wrapper div. You can see we have these two divs inside the contact content. So let's make contact content a flexbox. So we'll say dot contact content, and here we'll say display flex like this. And you can see that both of these divs are now side by side. Now let's add some more styling to it. We want the width to be 60 viewport width. We want the height to be 80 viewport width. And we want the padding to be 4 rem. Now let's say justify content to center, align items to flex start like this. Then we'll add a border of 1px solid, and the color will be RGBA 47 138, and the opacity will be 1 like this. Now let's add a border radius of 2 rem, and we also want to add a box shadow of at position 0 0, and we want the blur to be 20 pixel, and we want to set the color to 41 84 163 at 0.3 like this. And that is already looking so cool. After that, let's now style the content inside it. So let's first style these h2s. So we can say dot contact content h2 font size of 1.5 frame, like this. Now let's come on the form info div. So we'll say dot form info div. We want to give it a width of 40% and we'll give it a padding right of 2 like this. Now let's take the text inside the form info div. So we'll say dot form info div p, and here we want to give it a width of 80% like this. Now let's check our, close this. Now let's check our original. Okay, we have a space here and we have some space here as well. So we can create that space in our HTML. So after get in touch, we can add a VR element like this. And after the text is complete, we can add a VR here as well. Okay, awesome. And then after this, send me a message, the h2 element, we can add a line break. And then we want to add a line break here as well. Now we can see that our labels for the form are missing. So let's create that first. Now we also want to add some line breaks after these input boxes. Okay, so we'll copy this and paste it here, and we'll paste it here. Okay, that's it. Now we want to create some placeholders. So we'll say placeholder equal to name. Now we'll copy this, we'll paste it here, place it here, and we also want to place it here like this. Now let's change. This should be email. This should be the subject. Okay. And now in the text area, we'll remove this name, ID, rows, and columns. For now, we just want to have a placeholder like this. And now you can see that we have the name, email, subject, and here instead of name, we want to say enter your message. Enter your message like this. Now let's start styling this form. So let's take the form content class, and inside the form content we want to take input as well as the text area. Okay, so we'll say text area, and here we'll say width 100%, then we'll say margin 10px and 0. So basically top and bottom margin to be 10px and the left and right margin to be 0. We want the border to be none. We want the border radius to be 10 pixels, we want padding left to 20 pixels, and we want the background color to be RGBA 255, 255, 55, and 0.3, like this. And we want the color of the text to be white. Okay, this should be border, and we want the color of text to be white, like this. Great. Now we want to change the height, so let's take just the input. So we'll say from content input, and here we will say height 40 pixels, like this. Now let's change the text area. So for that, we'll say dot from content text area, and here we'll say height to 200 pixels. We want padding top to 20 pixels, and we don't want people to resize it. So for now, if you see that we can resize the text area like to whatever size we want. So we'll say resize to none, like this. And now if you refresh this, yeah, this should fall perfectly in place. Now let's change the color of the placeholder. So for that, we will say dot from content input, and we will say placeholder, and also the placeholder of the text area. So we'll say placeholder like this, and we'll set its color to white, like this. And you can see now we have beautiful form elements. Now let's style this button. So for that, we will say from content button, and we want to set the border radius to 10 pixels, like this. And we also want to create that nice gradient. So for that, we don't need to do anything. We just need to add a gradient class to the button. So we'll say class gradient, like this. And you can see that our button is ready. Awesome. Now, when we're clicking on these elements, you can see that there's an outline here, and this outline is not looking very good as compared to here. You can see we're getting a very nice outline. So we want the outline to be like this and not exactly this. So let's change that. So we'll say dot from content input, and we can add a pseudo class of focus, and similarly for text area. So we'll say text area focus, and here we'll say outline to 1px solid RGBA 255, 255, 255, and 0.5, like this. Then we'll have a box shadow of 0 pixels, 10 pixel, 20 pixel. So basically 0, 10 is the displacement from the center, 20 pixels is the blur, and then we want the color to be 0, 0, 0, 0.15 opacity. Okay, so now when we focus, you will see a little elevating effect as if that element elevates from the background, and this is looking really nice. Now we also want to add a background color. As you can see here, this is a background color. So let's add that to our form content. We will say background RGBA 47, 47, 138 and 0.6, like this. And this is already looking super awesome. Now let's add the phone number and the email here. So for that, let's go to our index.html, and here we need to add the images, the logo of phone number and the email. So in here we will add a class of info, which will be common to both the elements, like this. And in here we also want an image, and that will be asset slash phone number, phone.png, like this. And then again here we will add an image, and that will be asset slash email.png. Awesome. And then we can add a dummy email here. So we'll say abc@gmail.com. You can add your email here, and we'll add a dummy phone number. So we'll say something +1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2. Okay, that's great. Now you can see that our images are not visible, and our phone number and email are slightly off. So let's fix that. Let's go to the info class. So here we'll say .info. So here we'll say display flex. Okay, now you can see that we have both these email and phone number at the correct location. After that, we will say align items center, like this. We still can't see our phone and email image. Okay, the reason why we are not able to see our phone and email logo is because we have spelled it incorrectly. For some reason the autocomplete didn't happen, and yeah, now you can see we have our phone, and if I say email like this, yeah, now we have our email as well. We also want to have a slight padding here, so for that we can wrap this in span. So we'll say span like this, and we place the number inside it, and similarly we'll create a span here, and we'll place the email as well, like this. Now we'll take the span, so we'll say .info span, and we'll say padding left to 10 pixels, like this. Now we also want to add a bit of spacing here, so for that we can use a BR tag. So just after the phone number we can add a BR tag like this, and now you can see that our email is going out of our form div. So to fix that, we can just go to our form content, or like contact content, and we can change its height to 80. Actually, we made a wrong height. This should be 80 VH, like this. And now everything is inside the form. Now still you can see there's some overlap between the phone number and the email, but that is only for smaller screens, and we'll handle that using media queries. If for the larger screen, you can see that the form is looking perfectly fine. And don't worry, we will make the form completely responsive using media queries. Our form is responsive to an extent. For example, till here it is good, but after that it starts to break. So we'll handle that using media queries. But for now, this is perfectly fine. So our form is ready, and next we need to create the footer section, and we need to add these images. So let's go back to our HTML. So let's first add the two images in the bottom. So for that, we'll go towards the end, and just before the last section ends, so just before this closing section tag, we will add the two images. So we'll say img like this. Here we'll say assets slash, and here we'll choose illustration bottom one. Okay, and we'll add some classes. So we'll say class equal to ILL and ILL bottom one. Now let's copy this, paste it again, and here we'll change this image to illustration bottom 2, like this. And we'll also change the class to L bottom 2. Okay, now let's see where our images are on the screen. Let's refresh this once. Yeah, and you can see both of our images are here. Okay, so now let's go to the style.css, and let's first take the first image. So we'll say dot ILL slash bottom one, and here we'll say top 500 pixels. Okay, after that we'll say right to minus 450 pixels. Then we'll rotate it a bit, so we'll say rotate to minus 10 degrees, and that's it. And you can see that our image seems to be placed perfectly. Now let's take this image. So for that, say dot ILL bottom 2, and for that we'll say top 800 pixels. We'll say left to minus 250 pixels, like this, and that's good. So you can see both of our images have been placed correctly. Now you can see here behind the form we need to create that class morphism effect, and you know how to do that. So we'll go to the form content. So here we'll go to the content to the contact content, and here we'll say backdrop filter, and we'll say blur 5 pixels, like this, and you can see this nice glass morphism effect behind the form. So that completes both of our images. Now let's create a footer. So we go back to our index.html, and inside this section we will create a footer tag like this, and here we can create a div with a class of footer content. So we say footer dash content. Let's make this VS Code a bit larger so that you can see better. Okay, now Here we'll create a P element and we'll say connect with me on social media, like this. And then we'll create another div with a class of social media, like this. And here we want to add all these images, okay? The Facebook image, the Twitter image, and all of those images. So we'll take the img tag and we'll copy it 5 times, like this. And you can see we have 5 image tags. Now let's start placing the src. So we'll say assets slash Facebook png. Then we go here. Assets slash Twitter png. Then assets slash LinkedIn png. Assets slash Instagram png. And finally, assets slash YouTube page. Okay, and you can see all of these images here. Now, after this div, we want to create a HR. So we'll create a horizontal line and we'll give it a class of horizontal line, like this. And then we will create another div with the footer text. So we'll say footer text, and here we'll say copyright 2023. You can add whatever you want, okay? And you can see all of this footer content here. Now let's style these footer content. So let's target the footer content class first. So here, first we'll take the footer element. So we'll say footer and we'll say position absolute. And let's give it a top property of 1000 pixel. Then we'll say left to minus 20 VW, and we'll give it a z index of 0. You will understand why I'm doing that, why I have given the z index of 0 in a moment. So now we have our footer section here. After that, let's take the footer content class. So I'll say footer content, and here we will first set it to display flex. Now we want everything to be in center, and we want everything default behavior of the flex box, as you know, is it places item in a row. We want to place them in a column, so we'll do that. We'll say flex direction to column, and you can see all of these items are in a column now. Now we want to center it, so we'll say justify content to center. Then we will do line items to center, like this. Now nothing happened because we haven't given it a width property, so let's give it width of 100 VW. And now you can see everything is exactly in the center. Now I also want to give it a height, so let's give a height of 450 pixels, and let's give it a background of RGBA 47 138, and let's give it opacity of 0.5, like this. Now everything is crumped up here. I don't want it like that. I want this line to be at the top, then at the center these icons, and this particular line at the bottom. So for that, we can choose the justify content from center to space around, like this. And now you can see everything is fine. Now you can see both of these images, like this image and this image, they both are behind this footer, right? I want this image to be in front of the footer and this particular image to be behind the footer. So first, let's add a backdrop filter. So we'll add a backdrop filter to our footer, and we'll say blur 5 pixels, like this. And you can see, and now I want this particular image to be above the footer. So you can see we have given it a z-index of 0. So I'll just say bottom 2, and I'll give it a z-index of 1, and I think that should do the trick. Yeah, now you can see this image is on the top, and then we have the footer, and this image is behind the footer, and that is looking awesome. Okay, now let's style this horizontal line, which you can see here. So for that, we will take the horizontal line class and we will set its width to 80 VW, like this, and we'll set its opacity to 0.3. Now after that, I want these social media images to be in line. So for that, let's take dot social media, and we'll say img, like that. And here we'll say height 5 frame, then we'll say width auto, and padding to 10 pixels, like this. And you can see they are looking awesome now. Now let's add some hover properties as well. So for that, I'll say social media img, and then hover, and here we will add box shadow, add position 00 with a blur of 5 pixels, and the color will be 295483. Right, and we'll set the cursor to pointer, like this. And now if I hover over it, you can see that we're getting a nice box shadow around the social media images, but I don't want this to be square, so we'll add a border radius. So here we'll say border radius to 50%, like this. And now you can see that we are getting this nice round box shadow, and we also want to reduce the padding a bit. Let's give it a padding of 2 pixels, like this. Yeah, and now you can see that we are getting a beautiful hover effect. Awesome. Let's give it some margin. So we'll say margin will be 8 px, like this. Yeah, and now let's add the transition. So we'll say transition 0.3 seconds, like this. Copy this paste it in hover as well. And this creates a beautiful transition over these images. And now you can convert these images into links on your own. So I'm not going to do that in this tutorial. Think of it as an assignment for you, and you can do it on your own. Okay, now let's style this text and this little piece of text. So for that, let's say dot footer content be like this, and here we'll say font size to 1.5 rem. Then we'll say letter spacing to 2 pixels, and we will say font weight to 700 like this. Now you can see we have this beautiful connect with me on social media. We also want to give it a left and right padding, so we'll say padding 0 10 px like this. Okay, that's great. So that concludes our portfolio website design, and you can see that it is looking awesome. Tell me guys what you think of this, and I want you guys to tell me in the comment section 2 things. Number 1, whether you want the deployment for this project or not. So basically we'll deploy this project and we'll make this contact form working. Secondly, I want to know whether you want to make this website completely responsive using media queries. So if enough number of people comment on this video, then I'll think about making those videos. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.